because my father knew the head of the talks department, and he must have got on to her, and she must have thought, oh, Herbert Reed's son, arts for him, you know, and found myself put in the arts department. Oh, I was pretty sure I was going to go into that sort of thing, but I wanted to get away from studio onto film. So I thought the studio was one, it was so complicated and so inflexible. I remember re-photographing the Elgin marbles because I thought the photographs the British Museum had were very boring. The photographs were blown up, 12 by 18 or something, put on what were called strap easels, and there'd be one camera on each easel. Well, it depended how many photographs you wanted. I mean, the complication was if you wanted to keep from 1, 2, 3, 4, you had to cue it every camera all the time. You have to say, cut to camera 2, on you camera 2, come you camera 1, stand by camera 1, on you camera 1, blah, 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 blah. And because I like to keep up a tempo, which I used to in film, I found I was giving myself too much to say, too many instructions. I know I was determined that the artist should talk. I think that started that series called The Artist Speaks. I know I had that feeling going into museums and so on, that it was like going to church. And art had become a religion, and there were the bishops and the cardinals who decided what you should think and what the sacred objects were, and I didn't like that. I thought, surely the artist knows something about it. And when I discovered that art critics on principle didn't talk to the artists, I remember one of them saying to me, oh, I never talk to the artists. I mean, you can't believe a word they tell you. So it's up to you to decide whether you believe what they say. Quite different from today. I mean, I think today's cultural situation is terribly muddled and confused. In those days, you know, the Tate Gallery, that was the Pope, and all the other clergy in the art religion, they all agreed. British Council, Arts Council, Tate Gallery, they all agreed in common who they thought the important people were. I know I was expected to get the best British artists, and I probably said Henry Moore, and oh, I don't know who said it. I know I said I can't do it in the studio because it's too heavy. We can't get the sculpture. I've got to do it on film. So that was agreed. I had to meet the artist and feel we get on. I had to feel there's a film in it somewhere. I know at one time they wanted to do a series called 100 Great Paintings, and that needed a lot of staff to do it, you know, one a week, blah, blah, blah. And they didn't really have the staff, and they were allocated all sorts of people who were just told, go and do that. Now, you can't do it that way. You've got to meet the person you're making the film about and feel you're going to get on with them. You can't just walk into anybody's studio and start. Artists are quite sensitive. Or they're great egomaniacs, anyway. Nothing outstanding except that I liked him and wished my father had been more like him. And I remember one of his assistants saying to me, you know, it's different when you come here. And how was that? He said, because he treats you as though you were his son. So we had a good relationship, and we had nothing to quarrel about, because he knew a lot about photographing his work, and the way he wanted it done was the way I agreed completely. We had no disagreement. The only disagreement we ever had is about showing one of the processes he used. And he's been criticised at the time for A, making sculptures too big, and he used to say truth to material, but he was casting in bronze. And I remember asking him, I said, what about truth to material? Now you're casting in bronze. And he said rather crossly, he said, there's no such thing as truth to bronze. but I liked the sculptures and I liked the place and I liked him and so on. And I was quite genuine, enjoying experiencing his studio and the grounds where he had things displayed and so on. And I was also interested that he was very careful not to spoil the village. So when he built new studios and things, he's very careful to see they fitted into the local architecture. And all the staff he employed were people from the village. His secretaries and the man who arranged the transport of his exhibitions to other countries, and they're all local people. And one of the things the foundation financed, beyond his own foundation, was a post for an art teacher in the village school. So he was very worried that if he'd become famous, the village would turn into a tourist place. He didn't want that. Well, I find it hard to say. I mean, cameramen changed, but they were always pretty good, sometimes very good. And I know I use music a lot, and sometimes I commission music. All this puzzled the BBC. I remember one of the films, I think it was the one about Michael Ayrton, shown at the Bergamo Film Festival, and I was called in by the head of copyright, 6th floor television centre. He said, "Oh, this is very difficult to read." I said, "What?" He said, "Well," he said, "this is the first time the BBC has won an award which is money. Because it was £1 million, which is about £400, but I was a millionaire." He said, BBC never won money before. We've got to decide how it should be split up. First of all, he said, "Where is the money?" I said, "Well, I put it in my bank." You should have seen his face. I said, "I'll have to charge you bank interest for that." And then he wanted me to explain what percentage of creative effort various people had put into the film, who worked on the film. So I said, "Well, there was a cameraman. Oh, he's a technician." I said, "I'm sorry, cameraman is very creatively important." I said, "There's the film editor. Oh, he's a technician." I said, "No, there isn't." Then I said, and I had background music. He said, "Background music? What's that?" And I said, "Well, you hear music playing, you know, while the film's on." He said, "Oh, do you see the musicians?" Head of copyright television. Oh dear. Well, I'd just say they were art documentaries, made documentary films as such, but there were no presenters or critics. I put the artist in that place instead. So it's what the title said, the artist speaks. So it became something you couldn't escape from, I suppose.